Okay, so when you first load into the game will pause itself, and you get an opportunity to look around the map. So you'll notice some of the things that you'll notice on the map. Plenty of trees. These are flowers. These are used for the herbs, for your herbalist. These are berry bushes. These are a source of food that you can be collected wildly, and it's a renewable source of food, so it's actually pretty useful. But your people get tired of eating berries fast, I've noticed, so don't be entirely dependent on berries to feed them. So there's some stone that's just lying around that you can use to harvest. There's occasionally you'll see like a statue like this. For now, it's just another source of stone, but I think it'll serve a greater purpose in the game as the game goes on. But for now, you don't need to worry about it. For now, you can just be like, "Ooh, look, stone," and I can harvest that. This gray stuff, as I mentioned in the map mode, is where you'll find most of your minerals. So I think, where do we want to settle? Some hill. I think we're going to want to set this a weird little pool right there. I think we're going to want to settle. Here looks nice. Actually, you might want to settle a little ways from the water. Yeah, right here looks good. So basically what you do is you get that blue banner. If you click it, it spawns one of these that you can look and click somewhere. It says click somewhere in the world. So we're going to go ahead and add our banner right here. And the very next thing you do is you'll notice that it has spawned for you your villagers. It's giving you your banner, and it's giving you a fire pit. Also, you get to name your city. So let us name our city. Let us call it New. So we're from the Ascendancy, and the Ascendancy worships a god called Cid. Or is it spelled Cid? No, it's spelled Cid. Oh no, I've forgotten how Cid is spelled. I think it's C-I-D. Oh, this could be bad. They worship a god called Cid, and I think it's spelled with a C-I-D. We're going to go with C-I-D. We're going to call it New Cidingtton. And if it's not C-I-D, then we'll say it got lost in the dialect of this people. They spell it with a C. We're going to call it New Cidingtton, since we're from the Ascendancy, and we're a group of travelers settling on new lands. So we're going to call it New Cidingtton. We're going to go ahead and hit the check mark. So right now, the game is progressing. But we're going to go ahead and pause it right here. You can also hit the 1 key to pause it while I go around and explain some of the menu. So there's a lot to take in. Here are your Hearth Links. Right now they have no tasks because we haven't given them any tasks, which is fine. First, before we jump into that, let's look at some of the stuff that we have. This is a big one. This is Talon Info. You go here to find out stuff about your town. So here's your name. These 3 banners are basically depicting how much of your townsfolk are in various things. So the green banner is basically laborers. So we have 7 laborers right now. They don't have any sort of profession. This one is the general professions. So, you know, your blacksmith, your farmer, that kind of stuff. So if we were to assign someone to be a carpenter, we would have 6 over here and 1 right there. And finally, the blue banner is the soldiers of your town. So laborers, professions, soldiers. This menu also shows you how much food you have in your town. Right now we have none, so we're going to have to work on getting some of that. It shows you your town morale and the factors that go into morale. So food, shelter, and safety. Food is basically, do they have a variety of nutritious food to eat? If so, then that number will go up and affect the overall morale. Shelter is, do they have a bed to sleep in, and do they have a roof over their head? And if so, then that will go up and again affect their morale. Finally, safety is, are they getting hit by somebody in the head? If they are not getting hit in the head, and they're not getting hit in the head consistently, unless they're a soldier, which is to be expected, then their morale will go up. Net worth. So basically, and I'll go back through this and explain why these are important. Net worth is the total value of your town. It's basically a reflection, as it says, a reflection of the prosperity of your town. Net worth is determined by the amount of things that you have in your inventory, so just your stuff that you have, the things that you have built, the items that you have collected, that kind of stuff. Buildings, as the name would suggest, as you build buildings in the game, your prosperity also goes up. And agriculture. So the amount of fields and pastures that you have, and the produce and agriculture of your town will also factor into your net worth. So as you set up terrain for farming, as you set up buildings, as you go about building swords and armor, your net worth will go up. Now you might ask, why are edibles, morale, and net worth important? Well, at the beginning of each day, you get a notification called the daily update. And assuming you meet certain criteria for the daily update, you have a sufficient amount of food, sufficient morale, and sufficient net worth, then your townsfolk will actually spawn a new Hearthling. So in this game, at least right now, there is no metric for procreation. Your villagers won't get married and have kids and that kind of stuff, at least right now. They might in the future, they don't right now. Right now, the only way you can get more people is through migrants, and you only get one migrant at a time each day, and assuming you have met all the standards, and we'll see that whenever we get a daily update on day 2. You don't get it on day 1, but on day 2 you'll get one. We'll see if we've met those standards. Inventory is just the stuff that you have in your town. As you can see, we have a carpenter's saw, a trapper's knife. We start with a couple wood logs, and a fire pit, and our banner. And finally, there's the journal. Again, we're under Talon Info. What is the journal useful for, you might ask? Well, as each day goes by, your people will have certain complaints and compliments for your town. Complaints go on the left-hand side, compliments go on the right. So they might complain about something like, I don't have enough food, or I don't have, I've had a goblin chomping on my butt for like a month now, and you haven't dealt with it. That will go over here. On the right-hand side are their compliments. They're what they think you're doing well. They might say, oh, you have a good variety of food. I like the fact that I have berries one day and meat the next. Or they might say, hey, I'm glad I have a bed. I'm just happy to have a bed to sleep in. So journal is useful to just keep tabs on what your townsfolk are happy and sad about. Our next button here is the Citizens tab. If I bring that up, you'll see that this is a list of all of our citizens, and their professions are these little icons over here. You'll notice they're all workers. So from here, you can click on a person, and if you click on it, it will actually highlight that person. And you can do stuff like look at their statistics. You can find out more info about them by bringing up their character sheet. And you can also change their jobs. So right off the bat, since this is the start of the game, we're going to want to assign somebody to be our carpenter. And we're going to want it to be somebody with a decent mind. I'm thinking Doran might be it. Yeah, I like Doran for the carpenter. So we're gonna go ahead and change jobs for Doran, and if we do that, it brings up this menu, which is a tree. Now these professions here, the weaver, the trapper, the mason, the herbalist, the footman, the farmer, the carpenter, and the blacksmith, these don't have any prerequisites except for the fact that you have that particular tool. So because we have a carpenter's tool and we have a trapper's knife, these two professions are highlighted. These professions up here are advanced professions, and you can only get to those professions by having the one that's lower in the tree. So over here, if we were to have a blacksmith and we wanted to make an engineer, we would need to level up our blacksmith to a certain level and then build for them a engineer's wrench and be able to promote them from there. Laborers, workers, do not have any levels, so any of them can be at any time any of these basic professions, assuming we have the tools for them to be that. So again, I said we were going to make him into a carpenter, good old Doran here, and we'll go ahead and approve it. And what he should do is, if we unpause it here, he should go over, and there he is. He's clipping through some people, but he's grabbing himself a carpenter's saw, and he has now promoted himself to a carpenter. And if we go to the menu here, we'll see that his icon has changed. Now he is a carpenter, and he has more tasks that he can do. For some more advanced controlling here, you can actually determine what your villagers do. I'll go into each of these. So let's keep our focus on Doran here. Over here, it has listed their current activity. So right now, everybody's idle because we haven't given them any jobs. But if we, Doran would haul things. So basically, if there's stuff lying around and he's not doing anything, he will go pick up some stuff and take them to storage. He will build. So if he's not doing anything and we have a house being set to build, he will help with that. He won't mine because we don't have that checked. And we can't check it because it's just not part of his job description. That's a laborer's job. He's a carpenter, so it's just, he doesn't mind. And then finally, job, which means all things related to being a carpenter. Will he do that or not? So for now, we're not going to mess with that because we don't really need any fine tuning with a small town like this. And if you wanted everybody to stop hauling, like let's say everybody's just been focusing on hauling stuff around, if you wanted everybody to stop, you could click this button, it will read it out and everybody will stop, and then if you want it to begin again, you just click resume. Alright, next menu here, harvest. So now we're getting into some of the gameplay abilities. So under the harvest tab, you have a couple different buttons. You have gather, you have mine tunnel, you have mine block, cancel task, loot, and clear. So we'll start with the right and work our way over. Clear basically means, is there an object in the world that you don't want there anymore, and you don't care about getting its resources, you don't care about getting it into your inventory, you just want it gone. You can go ahead and select the clear tool, and it'll prompt you with wanting to destroy the stuff or not. No, I need that stuff because this is stone and I don't want to get rid of it. So assuming, more often than not, you're not going to use the clear tool, but assuming there's something there that you just want to get rid of and you can't be bothered to do anything else about it, you can go ahead and select the clear tool. Loot, as I mentioned earlier, if you fight a baddie and he drops something, you can select this and it'll loot something there. We have it set to auto loot right now, so we don't have to worry too much about looting. Cancel task would be, okay, so let's say I wanted to gather this, and I suddenly decided I don't want to gather it anymore. You can go over here, click cancel task, highlight the area, and it will stop doing that task. Mine block is just, you go to an area, you select one block, and then you mine it. I would not recommend using this right now, with some very few exceptions. The reason being is because, unlike in a game like Minecraft, where if you get dirt or something like that, you can always place the dirt down again after you mined it. There's not a system for that in this game yet. I think they're going to add it, but for right now, you cannot mine terrain and then add the terrain back. So if you were to say mine this little block right here, and someone ran over and mined it, then you would be stuck with this little hole in the middle of nowhere that you really can't fill. So I would not recommend using mine block unless you absolutely have to, and I'll get to that eventually. You also have mine tunnel, which is similar to mine block, but it mines in a 4x4 square. And what this is useful for is making mines out of the hillside. So you can do something like that and it'll mine it out, and they'll get, like if you mined over here, you would get a whole bunch of dirt. If you were to find your way over to the mountains and mined right here, you would get some stone and occasionally some ore. So again, starting out, you don't need to really worry about the mining tools. And something, especially for you beginners, if you see some stone lying around, or you see a tree that you want to cut, you don't go to mine and click on the tree or click on the stone. What you do is you go to harvest. So this, if you go to gather, under the harvest tab, gather lets you gather trees, plants, and stones from the surface of the land. So if you want to collect this stone that's just lying around and you're not mining into a hillside, you go to gather. This is a mistake I made more than a couple times when I first started playing. And then you highlight the areas that you want to gather from, and you'll get these various icons. So the axe icon means that people are going to cut it down. They're going to chop that tree down and collect the wood from it. The pickaxe icon means they'll go and take those stone blocks and mine them for themselves. And finally, the plant icon means they'll go and harvest the plants from this. Now, the chop down and pickaxe one will clear these specific objects away from the surface and convert them into resources. The plant one will not actually get rid of the flowers. What they'll do is they'll go and pick the flowers and leave the bases and the roots there, and the flowers will actually regrow over time. So it's pretty useful starting out to go ahead and select an area that you want to start gathering from. So we'll just start gathering all this stuff. We'll gather all this wood, all that stone, and some of these plants over here. Okay. Designate zones. Before I go into this, we're going to go back to our citizen menu, and we're going to pick someone to be our trapper. And I think Trevion might make a better soldier. Do we have anybody with a body of 6? Yeah, I think Grellia will probably be a better soldier. So Trevion, we're going to have be a trapper. So we're going to go ahead into our job menu, assign him trapper, and we'll let it play a little bit. He'll go and promote himself. And now he's a trapper. Alright, we're going to pause it one more time as we go through these menus. Designate zones. So there are 4 different zones that you can designate right now. There is stockpiles, farms, trapping grounds, and animal pastures. Right now, the only 2 we have available to us are stockpiles and trapping grounds. So I will go ahead and explain those briefly. Stockpile basically lets you set an area like that, and from here, this is just general storage. So you've just selected an area of land that people will, after they've gathered stuff, will go and collect that stuff when there's nothing else going on, and bring it back to the stockpile. Stockpiles are useful starting out for just putting a bunch of stuff in, but as the game goes on, you're probably going to want to use more practical storage like crates and chests and that kind of stuff to store your items, for 2 reasons. 1, it's better use of space, and 2, if you store food in a chest or in a box, it won't go bad like it will if it's just stored out in the open in a stockpile. Farms are an obvious thing. You would just select it and set an area, and then you will choose your crops. Because we don't have a farmer right now, we cannot select a farm or cannot designate a farming zone. Trapping ground. So now that we have a trapper, we can select an area for trapping. And I think what we're going to do is go ahead and set our trapper area to be over here. We'll set 2, because I think I'm not exactly 100% sure what the ratios are, so if you want to min-max it, but as far as I'm aware, a trapper can handle 2 zones. It's not too complex for him. So we'll go ahead and set 2 trapping zones. Basically what our trapper will do is he'll go over to these areas, start inspecting them, planting traps, and animals will come and get trapped there. Finally, there is the build and design. So you have 4 options here. You have place building, design building, place item, and construct ladder. Now, place building, you get 4 generic structures that you can pick from. You have the cottage for 2, which houses 2 people, gives you 2 beds. You have the shared sleeping quarters, which gives you 4 beds. You have the tiny cottage, which gives you 1 bed in a house. And finally, the dining hall, which gives you no beds, but it gives you a place for people to go and sit at and eat. I think to start out... we won't worry about that just yet. You also have the tab down here for custom buildings, where you can have your own buildings that you would set. We'll get more into building and placing buildings in a second. For now, we won't worry about that. This is where you can go to design your own building. So if you wanted to get a little creative and make your own building and do all that kind of stuff, this is the menu to do that. Again, we'll go into this when we got some more time. You have place items. Excuse me. Place items are, if there's anything that you make that's placeable in the world, they will appear over here, and all you do is you would select them and place them. And finally, build ladder is useful for getting to high places, as the ladder might suggest. So if you wanted to, say, get up to where these berries are, you could go to this, construct a ladder, and your townsfolk will just go over there and build a ladder up to that area, and they'll be able to go up and down that hill. We're actually going to cancel that task, though. Next on the order of things is finally your crafters. So under here you have a various crafting. You have your various basic crafting jobs and advanced crafting jobs. Right now we only have access to the carpenter. If you were to click on the carpenter button, it brings up the menu of everything that the carpenter can make. Right now we have a apprentice carpenter, so our carpenter doesn't have really much that they can make. All the stuff that he can build is highlighted. So notice that he can only build the carpenter's workbench and some of these things. As he levels up, he will get access to these more advanced what's the word I'm looking for? Craftables, structures, what have you. Like these more advanced items that he can make. And so for now, we're just going to queue up 1 workbench because that's useful. And you do it by clicking on it. If you click on it, it'll bring up the item over here, and it'll show you what its ingredients are. Right now, its ingredients, all you need is 1 wooden log. This left number shows you how much you have. The right number shows you how much you need. So we have 2 wood logs already, and we only need 1 to make a carpenter's workbench. Down here, you can set the number that you want to craft. We just want 1, so we'll leave it at 1. And you just hit the craft button. So we've already selected it, and we'll go ahead and craft it. And this button is how you assign orders to your soldiers. We don't have any soldiers yet, so we can't really assign any orders. This button right here is something that you will click when bad things happen and you want your town to be protected. And finally, there's the bulletins thing, which is just general notifications for your town will appear over here. Anything that the game thinks is important for you to know. Okay, so again, starting out, you're going to want to select an area of trees to go and mine. And stone not as important, but trees are definitely important because you'll always start with a carpenter with the Ascendancy. So go ahead and select a bunch of trees. Whatever your profession was, select them and go ahead and designate a zone for them to be working at. We're going to go ahead and unpause it. And you'll see that our Hearthlings are already going about collecting the various resources, and they'll go about doing that. And as they're chopping down the trees, wood logs are appearing. They've already mined all this stone, and new stone has appeared that we can harvest. And notice that as they collect stuff, they will also bring it back to our stockpile to be stored. So other things starting out. As soon as your carpenter has finished building a workbench, you're going to want to select that workbench and place it. And someone should go over at some point, grab the workbench, like this guy is right here. And he'll place it. Who's this? Talon. Talon, yes. Aw, yes. You also notice that the zones that we designated for trapping, our trapper is currently going about setting those areas. Hopefully he will start to be able to gather some food for us. Now that we've gathered some wood, we can actually focus on our first building. So we're going to go ahead and pause it. So what we're going to want is a shared sleeping quarters. Right now, people do not mind if they are sleeping in the same house as other people. It just doesn't affect their morale at all. So for a practical standpoint, starting out, it does not hurt to build a shared sleeping quarters. Now, as the game goes on, what's the advantage to building tiny cottages and cottages for two? Well, as I mentioned, the various buildings that you have in the game determine your net worth, and it's just more efficient for net worth to have smaller houses with more stuff in them for one person than it is for a big house for 4 people. There's just not as much stuff that goes into building. There's not as many walls. Think about it. If you had 4 tiny cottages, you would have 4 doors, a bunch of windows, roofs, beds, furniture, lanterns, as opposed to a shared sleeping quarters. It's all just one building. So you get more out of building tiny cottages, more net worth, than you would out of building a shared sleeping quarters. But for right now, we need a place for our people to sleep. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to select it. We're going to click build. As you can see right here, it shows you what items you would need in order to build this. Do not worry about the fact that we don't have this stuff right here, the wooden lantern, the main bed, one door, that kind of stuff, because we have workbench. As the game, our carpenter, we have the auto queue option. So when we select build, the carpenter will auto queue the stuff that he needs in order to actually build the structure. Alright, so we have this structure out here. We can rotate it by hitting the comma or period keys on the keyboard. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to place one right here. Let's see, I want to space it a little bit. Yeah, I think that looks good. So we'll put one right there. We'll go ahead and select roads. Build a little road right there. And we'll finish editing and build. Yes, start building, and now our Hearthlings will go about starting to build that structure. And I want to have another one of these shared sleeping quarters because we have a total of 7 people right now. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to move this workbench. Let it play a little bit because it's in the way of us building our new town. And now that we're letting it play, you'll notice that we have the house set to build here. And our various townsfolk are going about mining out the area to actually make the house. Our carpenter is already set to work building some of the items that we need to order to have the town. So these are beds that he's building. He's collecting the logs that he would need in order to build this stuff. And our townsfolk are going about putting down the floor tiles for the foundation of the house. So they've already finished harvesting all the stuff that we need to harvest. And our carpenter has already leveled up, which is good. So, what does that mean? Well, if we go into the carpenter's thing, we'll see that he's gotten access to more items that he can build. So not only can he build more furniture and everything like that, let me pause it because we just got a notification, but now he can also build the wooden practice sword and the weaver spindle. So we're gonna want to defend ourselves relatively early. So we're gonna go ahead and craft a wooden practice sword. And we're also going to craft a wooden shield for the eventual soldier that we'll have. Let's see, is there anything else we need to worry about? Oh, storage. So there's a couple things I want to explain here. If you have a good abundance of logs, like you've cut down half a forest and you need a place to store your wood, build some log piles. Basically takes 18 logs and assembles them into a nice neat log pile. It looks cool aesthetically. It looks like that. You can place it in the world, and if you need it again, you just go to your harvest button and select it and harvest it. There are also crates. Crates are places where you can store your items. So we can always queue up a couple crates, and he'll build those, and we can place them, and our people will go and actually store stuff inside the crates. So that's always good. And actually, what we're going to do is we're going to select this stockpile here, and we're going to deselect food and drink. So he won't store food here, which is good because, as I mentioned before, food stored out in the open will go bad, and we do not want food to be just sitting here going bad. So we'll go ahead and change. So everything else they'll store here. Literally anything else we can make in the game they'll store here, just not food. If we click on the contents tab, we can see what all is in the inventory. So we're going about that. We got a notification. A grizzled traveler approaches. Mayor Burleyhands. Embarkees, praise Cid. I did spell Cid great. Okay, good. Here's something to get you started. He gave us 2 baskets of turnips, 1 basket of corn, and a basket of berries. So he gave us some food, which is good. And I think what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to build our second sleeping quarter. We're going to build it. Where? We're going to build it right here, I think. Yep. So we're going to build them right across from each other. This will eventually become a road. For now, they're just 2 sleeping quarters that we're building across from each other. And we'll go ahead and build that. And now they will set about building both of these structures. Let's go and check on our trapper. So he's going about doing some various things. Doesn't look like he's caught anything though. He's caught 1 squirrel. So what I think we're going to do, this may not be a good area for getting people, for getting animals. What I think we're going to do is I think we're going to remove this plot. And I think we're going to set a new plot over here. If I can actually get it to work. And we're going to, I think that if it's in the forest, it's more likely to attract some animals. So we'll worry about stuff like that. We did capture a rabbit and a squirrel. If we check our character right here, we check his backpack, we'll see that he already has some jerky that he's made, which is good. I guess is a good time to go over the character sheet. So if you actually select a person and then click on their name, it'll focus the camera on them. If you click on their little portrait over here, it'll bring up their character sheet. So up here, it'll show you their health, their morale, and their experience. So he will gain experience as he does his trapping things. His morale will go up as he's got food and shelter and all that kind of stuff, and his health will go down as he gets attacked, obviously. This will also show his equipment under the equipment tab, his job abilities. These are abilities that he will get as he levels up. So right now he is just an apprentice, he doesn't even have a level. When he hits level 1, he will actually move quicker. When he hits level 2, he will be able to make pets. When he hits level 3, he will be able to qualify for advanced jobs, which is cool stuff. Alright, attributes. This is just a breakdown of the statistics of what his various abilities are. And if you're curious what diligence, curiosity, inventiveness, all this kind of stuff is, it gives you descriptions for it. Morale shows you what his morale is. So it gives you some of his journal entries. It also gives you what his morale is, all that kind of stuff. And finally, his backpack is what he has in his inventory. Alright, we just got a new notification, and our carpenter has finally reached level 2. He is now skillful enough to use materials created by other crafters. So our carpenter is leveling up pretty quickly. Why is that, you might ask? Well, if you remember, when I was picking him, I picked someone who had a relatively high mind. So if we go into his attributes, we check his diligence, how long this Hearthling can work before needing rest, so he can work a pretty long time. His curiosity, so every 10 curiosity gives a bonus experience earned by 1, so he earns an extra 5 experience. His inventiveness, every 2 points increases the chance of crafting a fine item. At a certain point, he will gain the artistic inspiration ability, and when he gets that, he has a % chance of crafting fine items for whenever he builds things. Those are just useful aesthetically or for building yourself a new town, or not new town. I'm sorry, they're useful for just aesthetically putting in your houses, or more useful for actually selling, in my opinion. So that's useful stuff. So we've actually got ourselves a sword here, and we've reached our first knight. Now, what I think we're going to do... Oh, wait, a trader has approached our town. Hello, New Cidingtton. I'm just passing through, but I'd be interested in making a trade. If you're interested, if you make 9 wooden window frames, I'll be back in 2 days, and might be able to give you 3 wooden garden lanterns. Now, occasionally, as I mentioned way back, you'll have traders and merchants who visit your town. Merchants are basically like a store that will occasionally appear in your town, and they'll actually have items that they can sell you, and you can sell them certain stuff that you've built. Traders and caravans will give you a conversation prompt, and they'll make you certain offers. Not every offer is worth taking. For example, it takes 9 wood logs to make 9 wooden window frames, and it takes 3 wood logs to make 3 wooden garden lanterns. So this is us not even breaking even. We would spend 9 resources to give this guy in exchange for 3 things that we can already build anyway for only 3 logs. So we're going to go ahead and decline that ability. Now, accepting and declining doesn't... there's not a relation system or anything like that. So just, declining will not upset anybody. There's not repercussions from declining that kind of stuff. It just means you just don't get the finger quotes deal, which in that case it wasn't a deal. It was just was skyway robbery, so we said no. So don't always feel inclined to accept that kind of stuff. You kind of have to factor in, well, what it would take and all that kind of stuff. So I think while we're also working on these houses, we will queue up some more trees to be cleared. And it looks like they're making pretty good progress on the homes here. Let's see what our carpenter is up to. Still crafting beds. Okay, that's good. He's already made the crates. I think he's already made the shield. So for now, let's just check and see who we think might be a good fit for a soldier. So usually for a soldier, my first thing that I look at is their body stat, because they're going to be fighting. It determines their strength, how much damage they can take, how much damage they deal, and how quickly they move. So we have 2 people with a body stat of 6. We have June Rail, or June, I don't know, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. We have Grayla Rail. It's like they're sisters. So our sisters here, Grayla and June, both have a high body stat. I'm not going to pick June because her spirit is really low, which means her courage is low, which means that she is more likely to run away from a fight. We don't want that. What we're going to pick is we're going to pick Grayla. And Grayla doesn't have a great spirit stat, but it's better than June's. And she's also got a decent mind stat. So we're going to go ahead and change her job and assign her to be a soldier. So she'll go off and promote herself, and that'll leave us with 4 laborers. And now we have a soldier who will defend themselves and defend the town. Now, you're not going to want to assign many soldiers, and I'll tell you why. Soldiers do not do much. You'll notice that Grayla is just kind of patrolling the town. While everybody else is building, she's staying vigilant and making sure that no baddies come and attack us. Now, while that's useful for, say, when goblins come and try and munch on our brains, or whatever it is that goblins do, it also means that while building the houses and stuff like that, she won't do anything. If we actually check the job description, we'll notice that the only things that outside of their job for patrolling and fighting monsters that a footman could do is haul. So if there's stuff lying around that needs carried places and they're not busy patrolling, they'll go and grab stuff to haul. But they'll prioritize patrolling over going and getting that kind of stuff. So even then, they're not reliable for that kind of a job. So it's not, it's just, you don't want to have many soldiers because, especially at the beginning of the game, and you'll see in a second whenever we get attacked, there's just not many threats starting out. And so you don't need as many soldiers to fight off against the threats, and also you don't want to lose out on the work that that potential person could be doing. So for now, we'll just let Grayla do her thing. Actually, I can explain. Well, I'll explain this stuff whenever we get into a fight. But there's some buttons over here that you can use to control a person. Alright, we got our first daily update. So daily update is basically what determines if you're going to have a new person. So you'll notice that our morale is high enough and our net worth is high enough, but our food is not nearly close enough to what we need it to be. And what we're going to do to try and resolve that is we're going to go to our carpenter. We're going to create a farmer's hoe, because we can actually start farming now. Another thing that we're going to do to resolve that is we're going to go and find some... Sorry, I'm messing up all my buttons here. We're going to go find some berry bushes and collect some berries from those bushes, as one would do with a berry bush. and get ourselves some extra food. I don't think we're going to travel quite that far. Here we go. And we'll get a whole bunch of tasty berries for our townsfolk. Now, people, again, like I said, people get tired of berries pretty quickly. But what's useful about it is it's a great way to pad your food stat. So while you don't have a farmer or anything like that, it's useful to go ahead and get your food stat up. So I'm going to go ahead and go around and collect some of these plants again, because they're useful, and you'll see later why. But for now, we'll just collect some of it, and we'll unpause it after we've set some stuff to be collected. There we go. You'll notice that one of the cool things about building buildings in this game is that now you might say, oh, well, these are custom build, or these are template buildings, so it makes sense that they know how to build this stuff. But if you actually, what's really cool is if you go into the design thing and design your own building, the way this is designed to work and the way it will ultimately be. Now it's still a little buggy right now, but the way this will ultimately be, and there's a ton of potential here, is you basically go into the design menu and you build your building, and your townsfolk, your Hearthlings, will be smart enough to know to build scaffolding and all that kind of stuff in order to actually just build it. So instead of you going around and placing each block yourself, you would set the building to be built, and then your townsfolk will actually go and build the building for you. I think that's really cool. I think it's got a lot of potential there. Unfortunately, the building wizard, or the building mechanic, has got a lot of bugs right now, and they're working on it. Again, this is alpha, so it's going to have issues. But I think it's got a lot of potential. I think it's one of the coolest things about this game is the way that these buildings are built. The fact that they will be able to build any custom building from scratch is just a really cool premise to me. And I cannot even begin to think about just the sheer amount of artificial intelligence coding that needs, and pathfinding that needs to go into it just to make it work. But I think it's got to be cool. It's just a cool idea, and I'm excited for it. Okay, so we have our first person who fell asleep. Unfortunately, we have not gotten any beds down to help, these people sleep in. So I imagine, yeah. So he's bummed that he had no food, which I don't get because there's food lying around. He's upset that he had to sleep on the ground. So his food stat, his food morale, and his shelter morale have both gone down. Now, once he has shelter and once he's actually eaten food, he will be okay with that. But for now, our morale has gone down a little bit. And actually, if we go to our thing and check our morale, we'll notice that it's at 4.7. Our lowest is food, which is a little weird because the first night they don't have to eat, but they always seem to complain about not eating the first night, even though they didn't have to eat. But today they will eat, probably around noontime. They'll all stop what they're doing and go eat their food. This person's sleeping on a roof. Something just strikes me as incredibly dangerous about that. But this house is almost done as far as the outer structure goes, and then they'll actually put in the beds and all that good stuff. Now we have our farmer's hoe done, but we're not gonna build a farm just yet. I think collecting those berries will go a long way to actually making the stuff that we need. What we are going to do is to keep leveling up our carpenter. We're going to queue up a bunch of fences. Fences are useful in this game because they just give you a lot of basically, bad guys cannot tear down buildings that you create, with the exception of, I think, doors. And even then, only a certain bad guy can do that. So fences are a useful way for keeping monsters in and out of certain places that you don't want them to go. Now, I guess theoretically, we could just wall ourselves in with a fence and then nobody could come and attack us. But where's the fun in that? So we're not going to do that. We're going to, I mean, we'll eventually build a wall, and as our town grows, we'll, you know, try and funnel people into a certain place. But for now, you know, we're going to fence in certain vulnerable areas. All right, let's see. We've got stuff that we're collecting. They've already collected some of the stuff. And our trapper has reached level 1, which means he now will move quicker and collect more food for us, which is always good. And it's also good because he's got a lot of animals in his traps that he really needs to get around and do stuff with. I'm not entirely sure where he's going. He's groggy because he didn't sleep on a bed. And he's going to mine, looks like. Which I'm not entirely sure why, because he has stuff that he could be doing. Look at all this food and pelts that you could be gathering. Instead, you're harvesting stuff. I mean, I'm glad somebody's harvesting, because everybody else isn't really doing it. But still, you know, our carpenter leveled up again. And if I go ahead and click on this, they're starting to place some of the structures. They placed the door, they'll be placing some of these windows, and hopefully, soon, they'll be placing those beds. And then once that's done, they'll probably come over here and start finishing this house. But the nice thing about the houses is if I actually go into our town information thing, you'll notice that we're making we have 702 net worth just from buildings alone. So just from building this house, we've made 702 net worth. So that's good. Anyway, I think this is a good place to call it. So this was a basic tutorial and introduction to the game. Got a little bit more gameplay than I expected. Hopefully you found this informative. Hopefully you found this useful. In the next episode, we're actually going to get right into playing the game. I'll still explain some of the stuff that I'm doing. But for now, I'll leave it at that. I want to thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for part 2.